minus 28.4, and then Mina pulling up the rear with minus 48. So those scores are going to maintain going into this next game here, and they have to continue to build on them and either try to come back or maintain the lead that they have.
Right, so right off the bat, our two main contenders for first place going to be Tips and Tricks and Darkholm. And wow, Tips and Tricks already has such a nice hand. They have a triplet of White Dragon Concealed, which is already 1 point. They also have a Dora in hand, some very nice shapes, and also a Green Dragon's pair. So this could really set the base for the match if Tips wins this hand.
Yeah, and they really have some flexibility how much value they want to go for here. With 4 pin tiles and the rest of the bamboo and character tiles not being very connected, they could just go for a half flush here, depending on what else they draw. And starting off with the Chi, making sure they use that Dora is a good way to do that.
Right, it looks like they'll just go for speed because they already have the value in the dragons and the Dora. So, and they could just Chi the 7 of characters to get into Tenpai, or they could... There are a lot of possibilities, right?
Yep, and it really comes down to a lot of times what you end up drawing from the wall. And we can talk about things that they can go for, but if the wall doesn't cooperate, there's really no option there anymore.
Right, so mostly just be seeing what they draw and seeing what they go for, right? An upgrade in shape, actually. Tips decided to keep the 5 of bamboo and actually drew the 6, so that's very useful. That's going to be a better shape than what he had before, and can also include the 5 the red 5s, but now he draws another concealed triplet of the green dragons. Very interesting.
Yeah, and this is a very wide shape that Tips and Tricks has, actually. There are a ton of tiles that they can draw to make it to Tenpai now, because they can get the 3/6 or the 4/7 to complete the other sides of those shapes and discard either one of the dragons or something from the other shape to be on a pair weight or an open-sided weight, depending on what they choose. But actually, they are going to go ahead and morph towards this Honitsu hand that I was talking about. Unfortunately, we lost that one.
Yeah, but it looks like Tips and Tricks did win that one with a manga, it seems.
Yeah, so that is the Honitsu coming through. Apologies for not getting that last bit in there.
Yeah, it looks like he did win. He has an advantage of 8,000 points right now, so yeah, definitely a manga.
Yep, so here right now we can see Darkholm opening up pretty reasonable hand, completed a set of Northwind already, 1 Dora, which that's a very important tile to connect that Dora. So they have potentially a very fast hand there.
Right, and that concealed triplet of wonders is actually kind of interesting because it does give you more mini points, so it could bump up the value of the hand a little bit.
Yep, but not necessarily the ideal thing, because then you can't get Yaku like Pinfu or Tanyao, but that said, anytime you draw completed shapes like that, it's a pretty big boon.
Well, so now they actually could morph into a mix, right, a pure double sequence even.
Yep, and we see Zephyr across the board, picking up the 3rd West Wind, and the West Wind being the Dora already, that's already a Mangan over there. So they're just waiting on either the 1 or 9 of bamboo to finish out that hand.
Yeah, the 1 or 9, so they're both terminals, so it's very likely that you discard it. There is only one of bamboo to draw, but we do see 2 of them in Mina's hand, but it looks like they're using it as their pair, so it might be difficult for it to be discarded.
Yeah, and it looks like Dark got
destroying it.
Sorry about that. It looks like Dark got lucky just discarding the 1 of bamboo just in time to slip it in before Zephyr drew that 3rd wind, and Mina's actually going to go ahead and reach, and then Darkholm draws into Tenpai as well. We'll see if they follow with the reach of their own.
Let's see. What will they decide? It's a very hard choice to make because they are already in first in the tournament, but yeah, they do decide to call Riichi. They want to secure this. If they get lucky, if they draw the 4 or 7 or someone discards it, they could just catapult them forwards into... Ooh, and they draw the concealed con. Do they call it? Oh, they decide not to call con. It's a very, very hard choice to make, guys.
Yeah, it's kind of that balance between, bonus points and just playing the safe tile out, but instead they're going to be rewarded and draw this force though themselves. No Urdora to speak of or anything like that, but that is still 2,000 points from every player, so pretty big hand from Darkholm there.
Indeed. Yeah, looks like both of the leads in this match would be both Darkholm and Tips again.
Yep, and it's really going to be a battle to see who can take it out on top. They are obviously the favorites, being the 1st and 2nd from the last, but don't count out Zephyr and Mina. Anyone can go on one of those dealer runs and really come back very quickly.
That's true. It is Mahjong. Anything can happen. And just as Zephyr and Mina had those unlucky matches and getting third and fourth, it could be the same thing for Tips and Darkholm.
Yep, and unfortunately for Mina, despite being a little bit back here, this hand isn't too great. They have some options for a pure straight, 1 through 9 in the same suit. But right now, everything's a little bit disconnected, so they are really going to need some help to win this hand. Meanwhile, Tips is drawing pretty well over there, lots of connected shapes. Looks like that they're just a couple tiles from potentially being Tenpai.
So let's see. No calls. As expected, would be a bit surprised to see a call at this point. Looks like Tips might just go for a close hand.
Yeah, but it looks like just about all of our players are kind of committing to the reach at this point. Mina is probably the only one who has the option of going for a full flush or something like that. So they could potentially open their hand, but I think we'll probably see everyone else stay closed. I suppose Zephyr could also go for an open Tanyao at this point, potentially, but they have a couple weird shapes to get rid of first.
And they do have 2 9s, which are kind of hard to deal with. But it could happen if, for example, they saw a 6 of characters. Could be something that they do.
Yeah, absolutely. So Tips really in the tank on this 4 here. So we see that they drew the 4th one, but it's pretty unlikely that you want to con from that position because the 4s are right in the center of the other shapes in Tips' hand. So you really don't want to set aside the con and be locked into that and then leave yourself with extra shapes that you can't do anything with.
Right. But now with this extra 5, they might be able to use this 4 of a kind to make a hand, and they do. Actually, they go for what is this weight? It's pretty wide. Oh wait, no, it's only 4 and 7. My bad.
Yeah, just 4/7 of bamboo actually. So the pair of 4s actually ends up acting as a pair instead of triplet or anything like that.
Yeah, so they have 3, 4, 5, 4, 5, 6 in hand, and also a pair of 4s. Oh, and wow, the Ipatsu Sumo by Tips on the Riichi Pink Tanyao. That's going to be great.
Oh yeah, that's exactly what you want to see. And you see the Uradora as well, so that's going to be a Hanuman hand. So as non-dealer, that's a 12,000 point hand, which is
and also,
a great boost.
And also the biggest part about this is actually that you hit Darkholm for 6,000 because he is the dealer.
Yep, so starting to widen that gap a little bit. If I recall, they were about 25,000 down or so, maybe 22, 25,000. So with the 1 placement difference, that'll be 10,000 right there. So they're actually pretty much neck and neck at this point.
And Zephyr picking up the pace with that green dragon call, maybe looking for, could it be the all green hand?
Now that's something you don't see every day. There are some options there. It still looks a little bit narrow. They need a little bit of help, but if they get that all green, that would be a Yakuman worth 32,000 points. So definitely something to keep an eye on.
Oh my, they do draw the triplet of green. Triplet of 2. They do have a pair of 4. If they get a 6 or an 8, could actually materialize.
Yeah, I think it's more likely to see that the 7 would probably end up integrated in the hand, so they're probably going to go for the half flush at this point. But if the things come out just right, then they still do have that option available for all green. In the meantime, across the table, we see Mina with the pair of the white dragons as well, so they might be looking to call that and try to shut down this hand pretty quickly. But the big question right now is tips and tricks. We can see right now 4 Dora in their hand, and they're 1 tile away from Tenpai too.
Yeah, that is true. We have been focusing on that hand because of the potential, but Tips here are already Tenpai and going to call Riichi for even more points. So now they're waiting on 3 and 6 for a painful hand as well. And they are a dealer with, like you said, 4 Dora. So this is already a Hanuman. It could be even more if they sumo with the Uradora and the Spyman.
Oh yeah, it doesn't take much at this point, and this could be potentially a massive hand as well.
We'll see what happens. We'll also see the other players maybe still trying to push because, at this point, you're running out of time. You kind of just have to win. Ooh.
And Darkholm able to shut that down with a Tanyao hand. So it looks like Tanyao 1 Dora. That's it. So just 2,000 points with a little bit of extra bonus on the board. But the big thing there is shutting down this massive hand from Tips and Tricks. That's very important in this game.
Right, because you think, well, you only won 2,000, but, the dealer could have won a 24,000 point hand. So you winning that hand actually makes a gigantic difference in the grand scheme of things.
Absolutely. Basically saving himself a Mangan, right? Because you get plus 2,000 points and then you don't get the minus 6,000 points. So pretty good spot to be. All right, so at this point, Zephyr looking at a pair of East Winds. Wouldn't surprise me if they try to call that just to get some dealer Renchans going. It is also a double win this round, so it would actually count for 2 Yaku instead of just 1. Yeah,
and this could be exactly what Zephyr wants. It has been waiting for all game. Anyone want to draw?
Yep, and looking around the board, we don't see too many of the Dora out just yet, so it'll be important to see, how people deal with them as they do get drawn. If someone reaches and you draw a Dora, obviously the last thing you want to do is just deal it out as an unsafe tile, because that could be a lot of points dealing in.
Especially because Zephyr could be waiting on it.
Yeah, absolutely. Keeping shapes that can use it and integrate that Dora is very important at this point.
So the players who can actually use it the most are Darkholm. Mina already has one in his hand, but he can actually use another one. And Tips could actually use it maybe, but then the other one would be dislocated in his hand, but not well. So Zephyr actually draws it, as we were saying. Keeping shapes that can use it. Zephyr cannot use it.
Yeah, so at this point, they're really looking to find that para in East to become a triplet. So if they're able to get that from someone else, then this going to be at least 5,800 points, which would put them, a little bit closer to Tips and Tricks and Darkholm.
And Mina actually has one of the last East wins. So they pretty much cannot finish the set without dropping in. That's what they're going to go for, because they do have to win, so they do have to discard it regardless.
Yeah, and I like this decision. It cheapens the hand just a little bit, but I don't think you can pass up this sort of thing. But we see Darkholm picking up an extra 4 or so over there, so it's a question of what they'll do with it. And they are going to deal it in, and Zephyr's going to take that Ronin for sure.
And it is double tone, so the double East, and with one Dora with the dealership as well, 5,800. A very nice hand, and also it's very good for Tips and Tricks, because now the gap has widened for Darkholm. He doesn't really care if Zephyr gets second, because main opponent right now is Darkholm.
Yeah, and like you're saying, I'm pretty sure this definitely puts Tips and Tricks in the lead. I haven't done the exact math, but definitely leading over Darkholm, so it wouldn't surprise me if Tips and Tricks really tries to push this game along, try to win some cheap hands, get the dealerships around the table, and just try to end the game before anything else big happens.
Right, because the difference between Tips and Tricks and Darkholm now is the difference of 20 points from Uma, and also 20,000 points from the match right now, so a massive lead.
Yep, just like I was saying, Tips and Tricks deciding to take the pawn of green dragons right there. No other real value in hand, no Dora, nothing like that. So if they win, it'll just be the 1,000 points. So the real benefit is pushing the deal around the table.
Right, and of course, you do want some more value if you can, but if you can't, it's also fine for Tips, because now he's in the lead, and if he just wins as it is right now, he does get, he'll be fine with it. He doesn't care for big hands as long as he can manage to suppress everyone else.
Yep, and Zephyr getting pretty close to a 10 by here. Have to decide a little bit, but there's one tile away for Riichi, Pinfu, 2 Dora potentially, so possibly a dealer Mongon. So they're going to be someone to watch out for if they throw that Riichi on the table. But Darkholm actually drawing a redundant 8 Mon ends up dealing into Tips' 1,000-point hand here.
Yeah, that was quite unfortunate, because he decided to discard the 8, but actually even this 5 would have dealt in. So either side of that shape would have dealt in. Quite unfortunate.
Yep, so we're moving on to Mina's deal in South 1. So one more time around the table is all that we're going to have to decide a winner for this tournament here.
All right, so yeah, like you said, this is the final 4 dealerships of the game, so everyone gets another chance at getting the dealer and getting those repeats like we saw in the first match. Maybe someone can get the 5 repeats again.
Oh man, this will definitely last for quite a while if that's going to happen. And we see Mina actually drawing the con of 4s, and once again deciding not to call the con. So again, with those central tiles, a lot of times you want to hold on to them, see if you can make them into something else as opposed to solidifying them into that con.
Right, because if you draw the 5 after conning, then you have essentially a one-sided weight, right? Because there are no 4s left. But if you draw the 5 right now, then you have a triplet of 4 and the 4, 5, 6, which is very good.
Yep, for sure. So this draws the 6 here, so is able to integrate this Dora, so very important step. And I think at this point we might see Mina decide to go for an open Tanya or something like that and just try to call it down and speed up this hand a little bit.
And we'll see, looks like the red 5 is going to go into Zephyr's hand. They do have some nice shapes, but they are still a bit far away.
Yep, and we see to the right as well, Darkholm does have 2 Dora of their own, drawing some pretty decent shapes overall, but still needs a little bit of help before they can make it to Tenpai.
Right, and Tips also has a lot of Mon tiles, so they could go for that if they want, but again, they really don't have to greed for value at this point.
Yeah, and Tips and Tricks is pretty close to that Ipeiko, 778899, and also 1 tile from Tenpai, so no, and they are actually now Tenpai. So they decide to stay silent here as opposed to reaching. So once again, trying to make that quick, 1300 point hand in this case, as opposed to declaring that they're ready to win and risk dealing into other players, and they're actually going to draw right away.
Oh, they just draw it themselves, so yeah, getting the bonus from sumo, but really, like, if there was sumo or run, it didn't really matter. So this is simply like a sort of positional play because they are in first, and if they just seal off the game, then yeah, that would be enough.
Yeah, it's pretty much best case scenario for them. Like I was saying, they're really going to try to push up the tempo, force people to lower the value of their hands to be able to compete with their speed. When we see an early discard of the Formon for tips and tricks, so that's actually pretty likely to be a Chanta hand again by the look of it.
Right, so let's see here. Darkholm, let's have the single self. Everyone's going to be keeping those because they are Dora. But Zephyr going to discard one, and Darkholm and Mina have one in hand, but if they don't get the triplet, let's see what happens.
Yep, absolutely. And unfortunately, Zephyr having to discard 2 green dragons and a Dora over there. At the same time, Mina, Paravi Swin, just 1 Dora. It looks like the Doras are probably not going to be too useful at this point, unfortunately. So it looks like at this point, Dark holding on to it and hoping to draw either a Paravid or something like that. But it might just end up being a safe tile to use later on.
Right, so yeah, like I said, those tiles can be used as safe tiles later on, which is one of the reasons to keep them, maybe. We'll see what happens, right? At this point, it's all about can you draw the tiles before Tips makes a win?
Yep, and I think the big thing that Darkholm's thinking right now is that they want to keep around this 1 safe tile because the structure of their hand is already kind of set. We see all the shapes kind of forming. We have 3-4 is going to turn into something, 6-7 is going to turn into something, 2-3-4. So all the shapes are there. So everything else that they draw is pretty much just redundant. So you want to keep the safest stuff you can.
Oh, and actually, Darkholm kind of dodging a bullet, but it doesn't really matter in the end. I don't think. Oh, okay, never mind. Now we see Pingfu wait from Zephyr instead of the ones. Another one is safe. Darkholm dodging a bullet there.
Yeah, I think that would have been a no Yaku if
I thought that would
have been alright even though it was highlighted in red.
Yeah, I thought that was a mixed purple sequence from the 3-4-5s.
Alright, so Tips and Tricks is able to draw into Tenpai here, so we see potentially a Chanta with 7, 8, 9 Sanshoku as well. All right, so moving ahead with the hand just a little bit. So, sorry, this is, yes, same hand. So it looks like Tips and Tricks deciding to kind of start folding out a little bit. So not going to take the risk of, dealing into anyone's hand or anything like that. So just has to take apart that Chanta. And that's really a good move, kind of later on like this. Because that way, you don't need to worry about someone hiding a hand and not reaching some Mangan hand or something like that instead.
Right, so speaking of winning a hand here, Zephyr is going to win this 420 is only 5,200, but it is a win here for Zephyr. But in the grand scheme of things, this does put Darkholm further away into third, and that's kind of exactly what Tips wanted, right?
Yeah, I think so. There's, really nothing else that you're looking for at that point. If the game were to end right now, Tips would be as happy as they could be. So the real question is how they pass their dealership at this point. We talked about it a little bit, with a couple of the other matches and everything. Once you're this far ahead, how do you safely pass that on? And the ideal case is, no one's in Tenpai at the end, but sometimes we do have to look out for concepts like Sashikomi, where you're intentionally dealing into someone else's hand if you think that it's going to be a small hand.
Right, because if you think it's fine to take the loss of a hand, then you can just simply lose the hand but still win the match.
Yep, and that's really a strong concept to be able to have, and I think Tips might be getting to the point where they're far enough ahead that they could potentially do that too. So in the meantime, with this hand, it looks like Zephyr's on some kind of Tanyao hand over there, potentially a 7 pairs hand as well with 1 red 5 there, so definitely a hand to watch out for. And Mina, that said, is going to be taking a reach, so it looks like a reach Tanyao Pinfu. I think that's about it.
Yeah. So Tipeiko Pinfu, it could not be Tanya because of the one weight, but yeah, if they get to 4, it would be a very nice sound. And looks like Zephyr, like you said, is going to go for the Tanya Chito Riichi, so that's a 7 pairs hand, all simples. We don't see that often. It's very cool.
And if they draw this himself, it actually turns into a Hanuman, if I'm counting correctly, with Riichi, Dora, Tanyao, and Chitoitsu. So obviously that's going to be best case scenario for them, but we can see on the board that every player is holding on to one of those 5. So unfortunately, it looks like this one might get folded down, and it looks like we might end up with a Ryokyoku instead, which, like I was saying before, is pretty much the ideal case for Tips and Tricks.
Right, and Tips doesn't even want to take the Tenpai because this pushes the game forward, and he doesn't really lose much. He only loses 1,500 points. Pretty much like losing nothing.
Yeah, pretty good spot to be in. They're pretty all right with that. So at this point, you know, it's just one more dealership, just Zephyr here on the dealer. Got to make something happen right now. And with Zephyr having 30,000 points right now, if they go on some kind of run, they could still pretty easily take this.
Right, and like you said, we're getting to the point where if Tips will do anything to win this round right now, as long as they don't get put into third or something like that, it should be fine. So yeah, it's a very strong concept that only like really advanced players can use. The Sashikomi, or dealing into a player intentionally finish out the game. That could be something that we actually see. I've never actually seen someone do that in a competitive format, have you?
I don't think so, and it is a pretty rare concept overall. You know, it's the sort of thing where most of the time people are going to try to make a quick hand or something like that, and we've seen Tips do that, like even just last game, you know, a couple quick hands and just try to push it along, and usually that's much safer, because obviously if someone reaches and you deal in right away, then they get the Ipatsu, and if you end up losing more points than you expect, then that could be a big problem.
And especially a big problem if you feel like something that, you know, we read it at some point in like strategy manuals or something, or books, and we're like, wow, okay, I'm going to do that very fancy move, and then we do it and we lose. But you know, the professionals, the really good players have been playing for many years, can actually pull it off properly, right?
Oh, absolutely. But the one thing you don't want to do is Sashikomi into the dealer, though, and Zephyr is going to go ahead and reach this hand. So this is a Reach Tanyao Dora hand, which from the dealer right now is going to be at least 7,700 points. So this is definitely one they're going to want to watch out for.
Yeah. And of course, if we see any Uda at all, it will be a Mangan because of the Kiriage Mangan rule that's in effect right now.
Yeah, so looking at everyone else's hand, it looks like Mina has some potential to fight back here. Still needs some help, unfortunately, but at this point, both Mina and Zephyr, I don't think they really have the luxury of, Mina and Darkham, I don't know if they have the luxury of folding, because if they know that Tips and Tricks is going to win the tournament or whatnot, then either they're going to have to hope that Zephyr wins this hand and they get a dealer repeat to try to make up some points, or they got to win it themselves and get enough points to win right now. Yeah,
really, like you said, people think, wow, why are they pushing these dangerous styles or doing these crazy things? Because they don't have time anymore. This is a final match, final hand, and if you don't win right now, you're not winning at all.
Oh yeah, and Tips and Tricks, you know, really in the tank, wants to make sure that everything they're discarding is as safe as possible. And one of the safest styles you can do is something that someone else just discarded. So seeing the 5 come out from Mina, Tips and Tricks knows that the 5 is going to be safe pretty much across the board.
And they do actually draw an improvement to their hand, but they decide to not even think it because they just really don't want to get hit by the dealer.
Yep, and looks like, is this Tenpai for Mina? Yes, so this is going to be a Tenpai at this point. I wonder if Mina is going to be able to, they are going to reach, okay.
Riichi, they're waiting on the 3 and the 6. And we'll see what happens now.
Yep, so at this point, Tips is in a very tough spot, because obviously dealing in and losing too many points is going to hurt no matter what.
Because Zephyr has dealer Riichi. They could get a repeat. Could be start of a comeback. Yeah, and Tips starting to amass a lot of different dangerous styles. So it looks like this hand might be a bit too hard to do anything about. Oh, and they actually deal into Mina.
So Mina takes a second, almost in disbelief, but it looks like that's got to be intentional, right? Because it looks like they had some safe ties with the 1-1 and everything. So actually choosing intentionally to deal into Mina's Mangan.
Wow. So wait, they dealt into the Mangan, but they're still in first.
Yeah, it looks like, oh, and that's actually going to push Darkham to last as well. It looks like that's going to be enough points. I think Tips and Tricks just took it. Even though he had safe tiles, he decided to play dangerous against Mina, but it didn't matter. He's still first, and it's actually kind of funny because of him dealing into Mina, it pushed Darkham into last. Yeah, that's absolutely crazy. Just enough points to kind of make that difference there. And I don't think Zephyr has anywhere near enough points to make up for the big deficit they had. So Tips and Tricks being the only player to hit positive scores for both games in a row, looks like they are going to take the entire tournament for KuroCon Volume 3.
Wow, that's so crazy.